This is Troy Black, and you're watching Filibuster today. And I'm going to be talking about what I believe is the scary truth about Nick Fuentes that is hiding in plain sight. So this is going to be my thesis, my opinion, and I'm going to give my co-hosts plenty of opportunity to push back as much as they would like on my thesis that I'm presenting. But we're going to be talking about, in general, this interview between Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes that just posted a few days ago. In this interview, they talk about Nick's origin story and his origin into politics, the 2016 Trump campaign and his involvement with that, how he was pushed out of the conservative mainstream group, his thoughts on immigration, nationalism, Israel, men versus women, marriage, and the corn problem. So y'all know what I'm talking about when I say corn, hopefully, but we're probably not going to get too much in that today. But as I listened to this podcast yesterday, I noticed a pattern, which leads me to ask a question. Is Nick Fuentes simply America first like he claims to be, or is he being motivated by something else that's a very strong, and I believe it's, once you see it, it's a very obvious motivation, but I think it takes watching the pattern to actually see what's happening. Might that be true? We're going to get into it, and let me know if you see the pattern in the comments below. And my co-host, let me know if you see the pattern as well as we get into the information. But I'm also going to be sharing my current conclusion and opinion about Nick a little later on. I'm going to be playing several clips of Nick Fuentes and some of the things that he said publicly that I think may help to defend my thesis a little bit, but we shall see. So I'm going to read through some of this interview. Y'all let me know if you see the pattern emerging. So it kind of starts out with Nick talking about his origin story, how he was 18 during the 2016 election on a college campus and got into a debate that kind of gave him his first break because Cassie Dillon streamed this debate between him and a senior who was a liberal on the campus. And this is kind of the story of how he became America first. And she kind of worked with the Daily Wire. She had connections to Ben Shapiro. And so through this debate, Ben Shapiro was made aware of Nick Fuentes and his existence, right? And then I'm going to stop here because I want to see if y'all have any. I forgot to see if y'all have any opening thoughts before we jump into all this. But I'm going to stop and let y'all chime in, and then I'll keep going.
You know, one thing I would just say is, for me, I'm pretty new to Nick Fuentes. I've pretty much just seen other people commenting about him, and I never really spent the time to look into him. But definitely had a late night looking into him this week and yesterday, and just kind of diving into to kind of really understand where he's coming from, where he's at, what he's saying, the core claims he's making, how he's doing it, and why people are so into what he's saying right now and why people are all about it. I noticed this interview has over 3 million views. I saw another interview he did had over 3 million views. There's a lot of interest. So I think it's really important that we talk about it. There's a lot of nuances here that we're going to get into. And for me, I think what I'm seeing is some true things that we need to be discussing, and also maybe some different ways that we should be discussing them. So I'm interested to get into this.
Yeah, I was more familiar with Nick Fuentes. I've seen more of his stuff in the past. I don't think not enough of his stuff. I know I've heard of him saying some like pretty offensive and polarizing things, and probably my initial take on that, just knowing a little bit about him and then like the people that like him. There's a kind of a subsection of the conservative movement that they kind of like galvanize themselves and get a lot of clout for trying to be like edgy and being like super edgy and making like racist and sexist jokes and stuff like that. And I don't think that's right. I don't think that's good. But I kind of see him as being like sort of a part of that camp. So, but when we're talking about Nick Fuentes, I do, although I don't agree with a lot of things that he's said, and I probably don't agree with like all of his, political points and stuff. Seeing like random clips and stuff from him, most of the time I found myself like kind of seeing his point or kind of agreeing with him. I think I kind of have a soft spot a little bit for Nick Fuentes. And I say that knowing that could like get me canceled or whatever, but it's not so much about Nick Fuentes. I want to make this clear. The reason I'm approaching this way, I'm trying to be like a bridge for the right wing like sphere, because we'll get into more of this later, Troy. I know I had that tweet from Matt Walsh I want to get into about right wing unity, but what has been occurring is Nick Fuentes got canceled so hard, not just by the left, but by the right, like by Ben Shapiro. And we'll get into all the things, he's had to face because of that, as well as get cracked down by the government and stuff because of his views and because of things that he said. He's been tried to squash and shut up so hard there's still a lot of people on the right that are like, anybody that likes Nick Fuentes, they're untouchables. You know, they're anathema. They're just racist, anti-Semitic, awful people, and they want to brush them away and put them under the rug. But unfortunately, it's not unfortunate. Like, you cannot do that. And one reason is because there's a growing, sizable part of young conservatives. He really appeals to young men, young, more right wing, and men that are more open to traditionalism. And if you throw Nick Fuentes under the bus and say, you're crazy, we're not going to listen to what you have to say, you're throwing a large part of the youth that are coming up and coming, that hear him and are like, oh yeah, I think, I'm interested in what he has to say. You're throwing them under the bus and saying, we don't want to listen to your concerns. So I don't want to do that. And so I find myself trying to, like, can we make a bridge between these two parts of the right-wing world that seem like they can't go together? Like, is it possible to bring them together? Because I think we need that on the right, because it's not really possible for us to unify with the left. So we have to unify with each other. But that's my initial thoughts going into this.
Doug, any thoughts?
One of the biggest thoughts that I had when I watched this particular podcast was that the thing that offended me the most was how Tucker Carlson was promoting Black Rifle Coffee, and that's all I got. I'll save the rest of my thoughts for later.
I think I was a little offended by that as well. Okay, so jumping back into this story, one of the things he notes is he notes there was a lot of campus persecution he was receiving for being pro-Trump at that time, because a lot of the students on the campus were very anti-Trump in the 2016 election. And he wrote this article asking a question, essentially, how is Obama continuing the same policy toward Israel that we've had before, an anti-Semitic thing? He got very attacked for it. And Ben Shapiro actually tweeted and quoted him and basically tweeted back and said, to accuse a Jew of dual loyalty is the surest sign of anti-Semitism. And Nick says in this interview with Tucker, this is how it sort of begins. So he gives us kind of a clue there. He's talking, and I would venture to guess he's talking about his radicalism in some ways, his radical beliefs or his radical stances, or even the radical way he talks about things. And so it's like, well, why did it begin there? I'm asking that question for a reason. He sees another response while driving to Mass on Christmas Eve from Ben Shapiro again. And Nick had tweeted, if you're Israel first, maybe you should go live in Israel. And Ben tweets him on that, saying, and basically just criticizes him again. And Tucker says that seems like the least effective thing you could do. And he's talking about if somebody wants to, like, come against you, like, the least effective thing would be to squash you like a bug. It'd be more effective to, like, have a conversation. He says, why do you think they did that? Nick says this. He says, look at what they provoked or what they catalyzed. So again, Can
I add something to the context? So at that time, this is what he told in Tucker. He only had 1,000 followers on Twitter, and nobody really knew who he was. He just blew up on that one thing. And I guess this Cass Dillon, or whatever her name was, Cassie Dillon, told Ben Shapiro, this is according to his interview, that he should be watching him, and maybe Ben would take him under his wing, and he'll take a look at him. And so that's why maybe he didn't have this big following, but then now this is what Ben chose to do instead. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So he was looking at potentially either bringing him into the Daily Wire or some sort of, like, partnership or whatever. But yeah, he basically had no following at the time. And so it didn't make sense to Nick that he was getting crushed, by this massive platform. Right. But he says, look at what they provoked or what they catalyzed. And so it's interesting to me. Like, I would say, okay, if you're America first, then it's the issues that are provoking your driven attitude. Right. But Nick to me, it seems like he's dwelling on an internal feeling that's very strong that has provoked or driven him to do something, right? That's how it seems when he says that. Look at what they provoked or what they catalyzed. Now, I could be wrong about that. Maybe I'm making assumptions. But then he goes on to talk about blacklistings, hit pieces, rumors to try to ostracize him from the conservative movement. And he ends up asking why the U.S. government gives Israel so much money every year. Because he did get into this group a little bit with people that were connected to the Daily Wire. And his response is that they try to shut him down, right? And he got some answers when he pushed back, and they were very vague. And eventually he claims that many of his friends that were connected to the Daily Wire blocked him kind of all at one time and shut him out. And that was in 2017. And so Tucker makes this point. He says, so that's pretty young to get canceled, and that's pretty young to have friendships destroyed over politics. And this is in the context of Tucker talking about when the same thing happened to him when he was 45. And at least that's what he claims. And he says the same thing happened to me. And then he goes, but he says, I had the foundations to kind of set up in my life to kind of endure that pressure. And he's insinuating that Nick did not. And I believe he's seen something in Nick Fuentes, and he's trying to bring it to the surface. And I think he does a little while later. And we're going to get into that. And first, we're going to hear a quick message from our sponsor. Investing can be confusing and scary, but it doesn't have to be. Genesis Gold Group takes the guessing out of the game and guides you on your gold investment journey. We at Filibusted love the genius design of the Prepper Bar, which breaks up into sections, kind of like a chocolate bar. But if you prefer high security insured gold storage, they have that too. And unlike Fort Knox, the gold is actually there, 100% owned by you. So don't wait to get started. Visit filibustedgold.com today for a free investment guide from Genesis Gold Group. So I'm going to turn it over for comment in a minute, but I want to give one more specific example in this thesis that I'm trying to build, and then I'm going to actually say what I'm trying to say. So we were talking about Ben Shapiro, right? Mm-hmm. He was kind of the initial provoking or catalyst. Next, they move on to the subject of Marjorie Green. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Nick says, with Marjorie, I was a friend of hers. She spoke at my conference, and then the day after she presented, she pretended like she didn't know me. And so to me, I'm like, everything about what Nick says, almost everything, he keeps bringing it back to a personal hurt. Mm-hmm. So instead of to an issue. Now, sometimes he talks about the issues a lot, but when it comes to why he does what he does, it seems like almost everything he's doing is, here's how this person hurt me, and that was the catalyst for my next thing, or that's the catalyst for what I'm doing now. So then he says this. He says, now that everyone agrees with me, so he must be talking about like his recent kind of getting more popular, right, online. Now, even though he has been canceled by many different platforms. Now that everyone agrees with me, I will graciously forgive them. That's what he says. So it kind of seems like his forgiveness is based on their agreement or on his success. I don't know there, but I know some of this may feel a little petty, but I honestly believe there's something very deep happening here that we should be aware of. And I know, I get it. I'm about to make a judgment call. I'm saying, hey, this is what I'm seeing. I can't see Nick's heart. I'll say that. But fire is dangerous, and I think that's what's happening here. So that's what I'm going to say. This is what Nick says next. He says, I got treated like I didn't exist. So again, it's not about the issue. It's about Nick and his personal experiences, feelings. He says, I got treated like I didn't exist. And Tucker says, but why make it personal? And Nick says, it's not personal. And I'm like, for real? Like, is it not? Is it? Like, it seems like it is. Then he goes on to talk about how he claims he doesn't know what Marjorie Greene's new views are, but how he still is against her. And so I'm like, okay, if it's not personal, then if she's changed her views, then it's like you should change your opinion, right? He continues to talk about everyone else who has disavowed him over the years. He uses the term disavow many times in this conversation. And Tucker says this. He says, it sounds like your life experience has left you so stung by the Republican establishment that you don't trust anybody. So I'm going to pause for a comment. I'm asking this question. Is there a pattern emerging here? What do y'all think so far? There's more, and I'm going to get into a few more, more specific examples. And I think in some sense, more condemning examples when it comes to my thesis. This is my opinion. But what do y'all think so far? And I'm going to say the word that I think this is all leading up to as well.
Well,
go ahead, Doug. Yeah.
I think that the biggest pattern, maybe isn't even really necessarily a pattern, but this is by no means a dismissal or permission or anything, but we have to remember that Nick is 27 years old. And I can tell you what I was doing and thinking when I was 27. And now that I'm not like that much older than 27, I just turned 39 recently, and 39 feels pretty old compared to 27. And I will say, if I had the kind of platform that Nick had when I was 27, I would have gotten canceled all over the place too. And so I am just grateful for myself that I did not have this kind of public scrutiny without actually having a real mature logical grip on what I actually believed. And when you are 27, for men, your prefrontal cortex is not completely developed yet. It is getting close, but it's not quite there. And so you say and you do things based on not having a completely developed brain. Like I said, this is not an excuse for behavior, but it does help shine some light on perhaps why he is thinking in ways that seem to be contradictory or very selfish, because he's kind of just in that development phase of his life.
a couple things that come out to me are, you know, I think he gets some things right. Like he's asking, he started out, you know, challenging the conservative establishment, because there is 100% a conservative establishment that is disgusting and needs to be dealt with. And he started out asking questions about, okay, well, why funding for Israel? Why this, why that? And according to his testimony, he was saying he expected there to be an answer. It was more of a curiosity at that point. And then he wasn't getting the answers. And then it kind of escalated into yeah, that's a good point, but just stop asking about it. This is his characterization. And then all of a sudden the hammer came and he got shut out. And so then he probably, you know, he talked about going from 20 to 50 to 80, you know, on what side he's pursuing on this. And so I sort of understand, you know, why he is like the dog on the bone. Like he just can't let this go, because I mean, it really escalated. It was the exact reason that he did get canceled and all these things. And I do think that there can be a both and, like there can be a personal hurt that he is experiencing. That is why it was driving some of the way he's approaching things. But I do think there also can be that could be tied to, like, if he got betrayed in these certain ways, and that's why he's maybe went out against this guy in his campaign. Is it Kent or whatever the guy's name was?
Joe Kent, I think.
Joe Kent, yeah. He helped him lose the campaign. And, you know, he kind of explained that a little bit. And I don't know the details behind that, but I do think, like with Marjorie Taylor Greene, you know, it sounded like he said, well, you know, if she's going to come back, then, you know, I'll work with her and that sort of thing. But at the same time, like, you got to know where she's at. And so the way he characterized all these things, it sounds really bad. But, you know, one of the things that really I didn't understand was he got banned from Twitter and PayPal and American Airlines and Bank of America. It's like, yeah, there's something there. Like that doesn't just happen. He is not even a felon. He's not, like, you know, all this stuff. So I'm kind of like, you know, I also sympathize a little bit with the guy, where it's just kind of like, yeah, he got destroyed. I mean, I got stabbed in the back in corporate America, and I saw how that changed the game for me in just that little bubble of the corporation I worked at, you know, and the impressions that people had you have to overcome because of somebody's backstab. Like, I can't imagine on this kind of scale. So I do want it doesn't really go against your point, Troy. It could be helping your point, you know, but the point is, I think that there are legitimate questions he's asking under this, but I do think some of that immaturity, you know, and just how to phrase things, or how to, you know, he talked about in his first interview, or that first debate, he basically just parroted Ben Shapiro's talking points, and he smoked the guy in the debate, and he won the debate hands down. But the way he says things, you can't really parrot his stuff. You can't just say it. And that's why I think it's a little concerning and dangerous, because the underlying point could be a good point, but the way he says it comes across in a way that could be easily misinterpreted, and it's unnecessary to do it that way. And so if people are using his talking points but don't fully understand the what's behind it, you know, that could be dangerous. So to me, I think it kind of is unnecessarily inflammatory to some degree. But I think he's asking questions around answers that I would like to see answers to a lot of these questions myself. But I think they can be easily misunderstood.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Before Reese shares, I will say this to clarify my view on his story. From what he says, it does seem like he really did get stabbed in the back. It does seem like he really did get betrayed and get squashed unnecessarily. So I will say, if there's a pain there that is driving him, if I am seeing that correctly, then the pain came from a real betrayal, right? It came from some real persecution, you know, even from those on the right. So now I don't believe that justifies any sort of radical behavior after that. And I don't believe, as a Christian, that we should, you know, walk in unforgiveness or allow bitterness or pain to rule our life or to direct our life. And I don't know if that's what's happening or not for him. I can't see his heart, but Reese, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I did want to say, not to get too much into Tucker Carlson, but I do have more respect for Tucker Carlson after this interview. And one of the largest reasons why is because Tucker Carlson really seems to show genuine concern for the state of Nick Fuentes' soul and well-being. It's almost like he's multiple times in the interview, he's pushing Nick, almost like, I'm paraphrasing here, but almost to say, like, hey, don't forget to forgive your enemies. Don't let, I might be jumping the gun on your word, Troy, I don't know, but don't let bitterness end up being the motivating factor for your life. Yeah. And again, I feel not that I think Nick Fuentes is a role model, and he's definitely said some awful stuff. But again, with the not just Nick Fuentes, I'm looking at the larger picture, because I'm somebody that, like, I've spent way too much time online. And so I've seen the spaces. I know what I see as like the mission field of people who men, mainly young men, who are more right wing or inclined more towards traditionalism or inclined more towards Christianity, because they see the left wing stuff, which is so self-hating of men. White people are racist, all this stuff. They want nothing to do with it. But then they come into the conservative space, but they also feel like there's not really a place for them. And if you haven't heard the African proverb of, the child who's not allowed to warm himself next to the fire will come back and burn down the village someday. And essentially that's what I see. A lot of people have tried to do to Nick Fuentes, and also to people that like him, who are like, yeah, I don't fit in. I say these like edgy things, and I'm not afraid to like say it as it is. I'm not afraid to call out the Jews. I'm not afraid to call out black crime statistics. I'm not afraid to call out these things that offends people. And when I say it, people are like, oh no, you're not allowed to talk about that. It's like, that's the kind of stuff that Nick Fuentes does. That's the kind of stuff that people that like him do. Right. But it's Tucker gets at something really critical about Nick Fuentes when he points out that Tucker's like, you've made the Republican conservative establishment your enemy. And he's like, why did you make that your enemy? You didn't make like Antifa your enemy, or like the left or George Soros. It's specifically right-wing conservative establishment. I don't remember exactly what Nick Fuentes' answer was to that, but it gets to that kind of like, I do think there is a bitterness there in the sense of that was the side that was supposed to, he'd be like, yeah, I'm, and you got to think about his age, 18 years old, up and coming, suddenly given like a TV show, like like a college student, given a platform of like, yeah, you're going to be the next, conservative leader. And then to have like a leader of the conservative movement, Ben Shapiro, come down on you and smash you with a hammer. And it's like, and then every time he's just like, and then the way that he gets banned from banking, and he got banned from PayPal, and he got banned from these things. And then somebody trying to come and assassinate him at his home, it's I think every one of those steps, it's like, am I either going to, in his mind, it's probably like, am I either going to cower back and be more submissive, or am I just going to charge ahead and be more offensive? And so you go more and more offensive to more, to more like, no, I'm going to destroy these things. I'm not going to be cowering underneath him. But I think there's a level of bitterness and also immaturity that can come out in that, right? And I think that's kind of what you're seeing. Like, I don't think it's the best idea for him to say, oh, the Republican establishment is my enemy and I'm going to spend my life destroying them. I mean, I get it. I have problems with conservative establishment stuff too. I have problems with Ben Shapiro and other people like that as well. But I don't think I don't think your life should be motivated by, I'm going to tear this down, I'm going to destroy it, because that's a bitter place to come from.
Well, the way he frames it though is that they're not truly America first, and therefore he wants to be America first, and that's why they need to be adjusted. They need to pivot toward his position of America first. And now we're talking about, well, what is America first, and all that. And so I think he at least has done a good job in his own mind, I think, of maybe convincing himself that that's the right thing to do. But I will say, he talked about the two approaches for making the change would be to infiltrate it and do it from the inside, or from the outside and kind of lob things that direction. And so at least I do think that it's almost like he's on the right racetrack, but he's not really playing by what the best way to do, the best, not staying in his lane as far as following the rules. And not that there's rules, but it's almost like it's not the effective way to do it. And it's a sloppy way. And it's like he's fallen over, and instead of just being a little more calculated in it.
Yeah. Good thoughts. Doug, if you have anything, chime in. If not, I'm going to respond to what Reese said.
Go ahead.
Okay. So Reese, you hit the word nail on the head. Obviously, bitterness is the word I was going for, right? Like, I believe that's the pattern that I see when I watch this whole interview, and I'm going to bring a couple more points in a second. But you also said something else, is that you have more respect for Tucker Carlson after this episode. I saw both online. I saw a lot of people saying, ooh, I like Tucker Carlson more after this episode because of his pushback, and other people saying, oh, Tucker Carlson just dug his own grave. So some people are more upset at him now after this episode. And I think it was over a comment. He makes a comment where he says he dislikes Christian Zionists more than anybody. And that was the one comment that was probably Tucker's worst statement that he made, in my opinion, in the whole episode.
It needed some serious clarification. Like, how are you defining a Christian
because
Zionist?
I think the clarification was, and I'm not trying to, I don't know what Tucker really believes, right, about all that. But based on what he says, he actually explains it. He just didn't do a great job. He mentions several quote unquote Christian Zionists that, like George Bush and a few people like that, he lists the ones that he knows that are high profile. And I'm like, okay, that wasn't a great list, of people like like those aren't people that I look up to, so
no,
I think
nor would I consider to be Christian.
Exactly. So like, that's the thing where he's like, he lists specific people. And I'm like, well, I've got a problem with those people too. Right. And I just don't think he really knows that group, like the full spectrum of that group. Mm-hmm. But I could be wrong about that. But I think that was probably the worst thing he did in the whole thing. But the best thing that he did was what you said, Reese, is he pushed back, and it seems like he cares about Nick Fuentes' soul, like you said.
Yeah.
So this is. Sorry.
Oh, I wanted to clarify real fast. When I said I had greater respect for Tucker Carlson, it had actually nothing to do with his political views. Like, and I know like that's probably an offensive thing. And like the Israel question, I know we're probably going to talk about it at some point. It's so controversial. And I have the point about like it's really hard and it's kind of splitting the right now. And I feel a personal conviction to find a middle ground. Honestly, it'd be like, is there a way that like people who are more pro-Zionist and people who are very concerned about another country or a very specific interest group having too much influence over American politics, is there some way that we can bridge the gap? Because I do truly see that as the right wing split right now, and I don't want that to happen. What I meant by I have more respect for him was it felt like, and I'm not, when some people like Nick Fuentes, I know he's done and said lots of non-Christian things. I'm sure he has. I'm sure you have some clips. But when somebody says, I'm Catholic and I care about Christianity or whatever, I kind of just take them as their word. I'd be like, okay, I consider you a Christian. I don't know. I haven't had a one-on-one conversation with you. I don't know where your heart is and your belief in Christ. I can't really tell. But man, this conversation was like, it's like all of a sudden Tucker Carlson became his like uncle and like sitting down his nephew that was like, hey, I'm an older Christian. I'm not trying to tell you exactly what to do, but like, here's just some things I'm a little concerned about, and getting into like forgiveness and forgiving your enemies and things like that.
It did seem like he was trying to mentor him, actually.
Yeah, there was nothing. It was nothing about his political views on Israel or anything like that. It was literally that I was just like, man, I hope that maybe meant something to Nick Fuentes. I hope that meant something more than just, the political talk. Because at the end of the day, that the well-being of your soul is more important than anything else. So that gave me some respect for him.
I agree. I think I walked away from it, despite a few of the random statements that Tucker Carlson made. I'm like, what he was trying to do for Nick, at least what I could see, I agree. I have a little bit more respect for him as well, because I already knew Tucker's views on Israel and Qatar and all that stuff. Sure. I already knew that, right? But I was like, well, at least he's trying to help this guy, so yeah.
I was just gonna say, for me though, like I agree. I have a little more respect for Tucker, but the thing is, I had a very high level of respect for him until recently, especially with the interview with the nun, where he challenged nothing, like
that was
even
bad.
The most ridiculous statements I've ever heard in my life. And in this interview, I was surprised that he challenged like 4 times the same thing. Like he pushed back and he did not take the answer, or 3 times. And I was like, wow, Tucker's back, like, hey, all right.
Ask some
questions. It did feel like that. So I mean, I will give him that, but still.
So I want to bring a few more, arguments for my thesis. Okay.
Do it.
So Nick kind of comes to this conclusion about the conservative voices at that time when he originally got canceled. Right. And he says this, and it's very interesting. And he's kind of generally speaking about all of them. He says, in some way, they were all sort of complicit in this. I realized the conservative movement was completely bankrupt in that way, and I became very radical. So again, it's like, to me, I'm like, you could connect that to he's radical about fixing the conservative movement, or also it could be they were all complicit in what they did towards me, and it could be connected to his personal pain. I'm not sure which way that would go there. But Tucker asks, why is Nick constantly attacking the people in the conservative group that align the most with his views on foreign policy? And this I found was very interesting. Tucker mentions 3 people specifically, and he says, why attack them? He said, they have basically the same view on foreign policy that you have. And Nick says this in response. He says, well, in short, they attacked me first.
Mm-hmm.
So it has nothing to do with, his response. He's admitting it has nothing to do with their views. It's like they attacked me, and Tucker says, yeah, but who cares? Who cares? And Nick goes on to tell the story of Joe Kent, who we pulled up the picture earlier, if I got the right Joe Kent, that is, and how he basically betrayed him publicly, how he was saying good things about him and eventually kind of denounced him, on X, I believe, or Twitter.
Condemned him. I condemn Nick Fuentes, specifically his views on Israel, is what the tweet that he said. Yeah.
And part of their agreement was that he would not publicly be against him. This is what Nick Fuentes said. Was part of the agreement was we'll do this secretly, support him, and help him get elected as long as he doesn't publicly disavow him. Basically, that was what he said in the statement.
Which is an interesting thing to kind of try to hold somebody to. Is like, I'll help you as long as you don't disavow me. It's like you can kind of see the level of like trust erosion was already. Like that was the thing he was trying to hold him to, right?
Yeah, I think he probably was used to that, and he understood there would be a negative association if he was publicly affiliated with him. But I think it's interesting to see this as just a personal issue, because when he said that they attacked me first, what I understood, with not being very well versed in everything here, what I took that as was they attacked his position, maybe him personally, but I thought they were attacking his positions and what he was saying, and so then he felt the need to go after their attack and that sort of thing. But I think it could be interpreted as just a personal thing. But I didn't understand why Tucker kept pushing back on the personal thing, but maybe I need to go back and watch the interview, because I thought maybe I just give people too much the benefit of the doubt, and I assume that we're talking about his ideas that are being attacked here, not him personally. But obviously I didn't catch that.
Yeah, and there is a line there. I think there's a gray line, and sometimes it's like not clear, but I think that's why I'm trying to present it in the form of a pattern, because as soon as I saw it, I couldn't stop seeing it. So the next thing Tucker says is, he says, having been denounced, he's talking about himself. He says, having been denounced by a lot of people, I know what it feels like. And then he's like, he wants to call him and ask the question, like, why are you denouncing me? Why don't you call me, and talk to me personally? And Nick's like, yeah. He's like jumping on that train. But then this is the point where I feel like Tucker really understood what was going on. And he tries to, like what Reese said, he's trying to get to the bottom of it. He's trying to help him. And this is what he says. Tucker says this to Nick Fuentes. He says, I don't want, he's sharing his own personal, story of being denounced, his own personal feelings, his own personal walk. And he says, I don't want my hurt feelings to govern my behavior. So if you read into that, what is he saying? He's implying your hurt feelings are governing your behavior. Like, because he's pushing he's saying, I don't want my hurt feelings to govern my behavior. He says, I'm not lecturing you, because he realizes that Nick is catching on to what he's saying. He's like, I'm not lecturing you. He's like, I get it. And then a few sentences later, he says, why not let it go? He asked that question, like, let it go, and it's like, to me, I'm like, he's recognizing the pattern of unforgiveness and bitterness and hurt, and pain, and how he literally says, I don't want my hurt feelings to govern my behavior. So any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on my thesis? Like, do y'all think I'm way off? Maybe there's something there. And then let's jump into these clips on Nick Fuentes. If we have time, we'll go into the Israel thing later. But I want to save that for the end, because I really want to get into playing some of these clips that I believe show, the other side of Nick Fuentes.
While they prepared their thoughts, Troy, would you mind? Oh, you probably already. Do you have that Matt Walsh tweet pulled up? Because that's something that
there it is.
I want to talk about. I guess I can just go ahead and hop into this. When I talk about this, is something that this is helping the continuation of your pattern of that idea of like Nick Fuentes and again, I'm coming from a place of like, I would like to see more right-wing unity. But I know it's very difficult for somebody like Nick Fuentes to sort of offer the peace branch, because he feels like, again, he says they attacked me first. And that's, and that is true. Like I don't think somebody should be canceled and have the establishment go after you and try to ruin your life and get your friends fired and all these things. If you like all the stuff that has happened to him, and like it's people being associated with him, getting fired, just for being associated with him not being able, like being canceled from being able to have a bank account, being not put on a no-fly list, all those kinds of things. They initially kicked off, the first person to cancel him was Ben Shapiro. and then friends that stabbed him in the back who are associated with Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire, all over the issue of Israel. I'm not going to touch on Israel and the Zionist issue here right now, but I'm just, again, talking about that like bitterness piece. Sorry, Troyce, go for it.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah, sure.
I don't think, from what I know, and I could be wrong about this, I don't think he lost his flight privileges and his bank account and that kind of stuff because of the conservative like influencers canceling him.
No,
I think that was based.
No,
I think it was based on things that he said that were very scary, to national defense, that stuff like that kind of stuff. Like it was like Homeland Security type of stuff. So
absolutely, no, for sure. And it's more of the just general establishment being like, oh, this guy is a radical, untouchable, dangerous. Yeah. He's an extremist, absolutely. But the initial group that canceled him was the conservative establishment. So I think that's going to be very difficult for him to let go. But you also see it on, there's a reason why Ben Shapiro came down on him, and there's a reason why Zionists, refuse to be connected with this guy or whatever. And a part of the reason is obviously because he said really bad and offensive stuff. And I know that he has, but another part of the reason is I think I'm criticizing them as well. I think that they do not have enough of a unity mindset to be able to extend the branch and say, hey, we can disagree over this thing, but that doesn't mean I'm going to label you as an evil, anti-Semitic, horrible person and never listen to what the real concerns you're actually bringing up. Because again, we're talking about real concerns that a lot of young conservatives have. And the more you hit them in the head with this hammer and say, you're racist and terrible for bringing these things up, the more they're just going to be galvanized. Right. And that's what's occurring. You're galvanizing.
That's the pattern from the left. I think you're right. That's the pattern from the left. It's like, oh, you said something we don't like. So instead of actually taking the time to explain our views, give good reasons and walk you through this, but also like hear what you have to say and like maybe even change our views. It's like the left will never do that. Right. Right. And it's like, I think that's a pattern we're starting to see emerge on the right, unfortunately, too, where it's like,
and leaving space for disagreements, because I'm not somebody that thinks there's, because that is what the, Ben Shapiro types will say. It'll be like, well, let me explain my views. But then, oh, you still don't agree with me? Well, you're anti-Semitic. Get out of here. And I was like, you're not leaving space. So the thing I was bringing up about this tweet, I'll do this very quickly, was I saw this pattern. And this wasn't the first tweet that I saw, but I'll get into this one in a second. Right after Charlie Kirk was assassinated, Matt Walsh goes on Twitter, and I couldn't find this tweet, but you can go back and find it. Right after Charlie Kirk's assassination, Matt Walsh goes on Twitter, calls for right-wing unity, and he says, "Okay, guys, we need to unify on the right. We need to stop splitting over petty disagreements, and we like it really is the right versus the people that want to kill us. Like that's what it is right now. So we have to unify very strongly." And there was like the top comment with some other political talking head, right-wing guy, top comment on Matt Walsh's thing. He said, yes, the right needs to unify. Absolutely. Everybody except I do not accept Nick Fuentes and the people that follow him, which are usually called gropers. It sounds awful. So the term
"grapers"
describe them is does sounds like a gross term. Basically, anybody that likes Nick Fuentes, no, they're not part of the right wing. We disavowed. He's like, and I'm just like, dude, this is literally, you can't say that, because if you say the right needs to unify, but you say, but not you guys, you're literally looking at probably half of young conservatives who are at least slightly warm to people like Nick Fuentes and saying, you're too problematic. We're not leaving space for you. Get out of here. You're racist. You're terrible. Right. And then recently you have Matt Walsh again get on Twitter just the other day saying the right needs to unify. I'm not going to read his quote, but he's just saying the same thing. The right needs to unify. And then I'm skipping the lady who claims that people want her dead because she's Jewish. But underneath him, you have Nick Fuentes saying kind of hard to unify with you when you're working alongside Shapiro and Clavin. And it's like, dude, it's like, you're the same, like Nick, it's like, come on, Nick, like grow up a little bit. You're the same problem. It's like, you can classify the right wing split as like Ben Shapiro and Nick Fuentes going at it with each other. Basically, like you're like, why can you not unify at least a little bit and say, okay, I don't accept all of your views, but I can at least let us get along the things that we have in common, And so that's where I'm like, Nick still has I'm going to burn down the establishment. He still has that mindset, that bitterness that's like, I believe is honestly hurting his cause.
I'd say they can be represented, but I would say I'm not a huge Ben Shapiro fan like I was back in 2016, whenever he started coming on the big debate scene and doing all this stuff. He has changed somewhat. He is total victim of Trump derangement syndrome, and he was very big pro-vax, I've got a lot of issues with him, and I think it's disgusting kind of how he just throws out anti-Semitic thing. It's like the race card for me. Like if he just throws it out there. And so I'm a little frustrated with Shapiro as well. So it's the same thing. I'm not here defending Fuentes either. I'm just saying, look, I'm not in either one of those camps. All right. So you're going to have to find another one because that doesn't, neither one of them represents me. And I still like Shapiro.
Absolutely.
I don't listen to him as much as I used to. But one of the things though, is that like when Tucker just asked him straight up, like, well, what is the solution with regard to Israel? Like, what do you want to see? And he's just basically said the government not being influenced by foreign allegiances and registering AIPAC under AIPAC under FARA, FARA, and banning dual citizenship, which I don't necessarily see an issue with that, but don't let foreign powers control your country. That's basically what he's saying. But that shows up in very different ways. You could say that, but is that really what you want?
And can I push back against that, Ryan? From other clips that I've seen from him, I feel like he was like outside of his own space, and he was giving
a softer answer for that.
The softest version of his answer that he could give, like, for a different audience to draw them, not to offend them too quickly.
Sure.
And I think that, honestly, I believe this whole interview was that to an extent. I think there was a part of it where it's like he wasn't saying the most extreme things he typically says. And that leads me into this part, because I want to get into some of these clips. Sorry, if you have one last thing to say, but then I'm going to play some of these.
Yeah, one last thing. I was going to say, I have seen others commenting on, hey, you know what? He is a little more mainstream now. A lot more people are paying attention. He is a little more interested. Maybe he's going to soften up, and that's why, is because, okay, now he is in the mainstream. Now he's got the attention. Now he can prepare to, do a movement and kind of, or maybe he's just maturing. It could be as well. But I would say at a very minimum, the questions he was originally asking, I mean, at a minimum, this gives you the direction for what questions young people want answers to, and whether he's the right person to give those answers. I agree. We got to look at what he's saying, and we got to look at what those are supposed to be answers to or complaints about. And maybe we could say it differently, but that at least gives us an indication of what answers people are wanting.
Yeah. So I'm going to play through some of these clips, and I'm going to say this. Some of these are going to be, they're all technically out of context in the sense that you don't get the full context, right? You don't get the full context of the situation. In some of these, you would have to get his explanation to hear everything that he believes. Some of these are probably the text on the top is not necessarily going to align with what he actually says. Sometimes they kind of beat him up a little bit in the actual post.
Misrepresent or something.
They misrepresented a little bit, right, in the actual post. So please take all of that into consideration. Also, some of these clips may be from him from when he was a little younger, so maybe his views could have shifted a little bit. So keep all that
when he was a little younger, because he's a little younger right now.
Well, exactly. Yeah. No, I mean,
but he's been doing stuff for 10 years, right?
Exactly.
So going from 18 to 27. And I'll preface with this. I saw a clip recently where somebody was interviewing Nick Fuentes, and he did say, I don't know the track of, like, has he matured? Has he stopped saying awful stuff? I don't know. But he did say that more recently he has tried to watch his tongue and realize that he was kind of being edgy for edgy's sake, and even started telling his followers, hey, don't just be edgy for edgy's sake. That's dumb. Like he explains to Tucker Carlson very clearly that he's like, I don't want anybody hurt. I don't want anybody killed. He's like, these are my specific views, right? He says that to Tucker Carlson. If he's telling the truth, I don't know it or not. But if he's really telling the truth, then it's like, okay, maybe that's your real view. But obviously he said some pretty dark and edgy stuff in the past. Yeah. But I at least appreciated seeing in a clip him saying that he knows that was more immature, and maybe he's maturing. But maybe he's just saying that to try to get out of some of the stuff that he said. Maybe he hasn't actually matured. I don't know. You'd have to see the progression, right? So I just wanted to
let's jump into these clips and see what he actually has to say. So with all of that context in mind, let me know if you can't hear it for some reason.
Why don't you have anybody dissenting from the right? When are we going to have more nationalists? Instead of just engaging with the left, now that the Biden administration has invaded our country.
So to give some context for this is somebody mentioning Nick Fuentes, and this is just Charlie Kirk's response. So this was like kind of how Charlie Kirk viewed him and some others that got classified in his group.
When are we going to build a big tent with nationalists like Jared Taylor and Nick Fuentes?
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I don't align with Jew haters. Sorry.
Okay, so Charlie Kirk's response to both those names is I don't align with Jew haters. Very interesting.
Thank you.
And he gets
Don't
actually
talk to
very
anybody. You wanna
frustrated.
Tell me why do you hate the Jews, by the way? Like, what do you think of Jewish people?
No.
Like he's very frustrated based on what he's seen from people like Nick Fuentes. He also goes on to basically say that one of those two names, it might have been Nick Fuentes, might have been the other guy, has claimed that we should have a holy war against the Jews. So again, he goes on in this clip to say that. Does that mean that Nick Fuentes still believes that, or that he even said that? No, not necessarily, but it's just something to it's something to keep in mind when looking at Nick Fuentes in the whole.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to try to pull up this next clip here. There we go.
I would like to say something about that at the risk of offending anyone. I do respect Charlie Kirk, but one of the biggest things I noticed about how he handled a lot of his interactions was that he shut people down pretty quick without allowing them to explain themselves. And so I personally don't take, not that he's wrong there, but to me, that's zero evidence of anything. Not trying to defend Nick Fuentes or whoever the other dude is, but I don't know. I really do like Charlie Kirk and what he stands for, but the way he did things was very much shut down, move on. I don't even want to talk to you. And then he moved on. And so it's like, ooh, that's not having a conversation either, man. Like we got to address it, you know?
Yeah. He had a very strong ability to say exactly why he held a position or why he didn't hold a position, and to speak on one side or the other. And so I would have liked that answer for him to just clearly say, here's 5 reasons why I don't ally with Jew haters and why he's a Jew hater. Like that would have been, I don't know if there's other clips of him saying that, but my problem, maybe a problem I have is I give too much the benefit of the doubt. Because if I heard him say, oh, there needs to be a holy war against the Jews, I would assume there's some missing context of, well, he must mean that it's against the power, the people who are in power and in control, and they just happen to be Jews like that. But that's probably maybe may not be what he meant. And that might be a flaw of mine where I'm just giving the benefit of the doubt, but I'm not going to defend that statement. I would never say that. I think those are
some good points.
That's what I mean by sloppy. Yeah, that's what I mean by being sloppy.
Let's move on to this. So I'm trying to give some context for what I'm starting this with. What did Charlie Kirk think about Nick Fuentes? That's essentially what I'm trying to give context for. And then here's some differences of opinion here.
This is a white country. Want to know why? It was established by white people, founded by white people, built by white people.
You could probably pretty easily push back and ask that question. Was it really built by white people?
White people settled the continent. And up until very recently, almost exclusively white people lived here. That's why.
If you go back to the original...
Okay, so that was Nick Fuentes' view, and we're going to kind of hear a completely separate context and situation, but Charlie Kirk, something that he has to say almost in response to it, but obviously not in response to what Nick just said.
Founding fathers, they intended this to be a European nation for white men of good stock and character.
Can you show me where in the United States Constitution it says that?
It wasn't in the Constitution.
It wasn't in the Constitution because they didn't believe it.
The founding...
What does the phrase e pluribus unum mean?
Why is that relevant?
Because it was on every founding document and presidential seal from our founding.
Okay, so obviously he's getting really peeved at this guy, but he makes the point pretty clearly that what the statement the guy made was that this was essentially going to be was meant to be a white nation, was not what they had in mind, and obviously you see that even in the Constitution itself. So any thoughts while I'm pulling up this next? So that was my Charlie versus Nick. And I'm going to pull up some things that he said about marriage. Well, let me jump to the last part of this one, actually, because there's something he says about marriage here that I think is important. Yeah, go ahead.
Me? Okay, yeah. I think I don't know. I just think it's a little interesting. Like his dad is Mexican, right? Fuentes. He said in this thing he's Mexican. So like, okay, his mom was from Italy, right? 100% Italian. So so should his dad and his mom have been together? Like, I don't like, what is that? I don't know what he thinks about that. And then like he was talking with, I saw Patrick Bet-David, who's an interview with him, and he's kind of like, well, do you think that people like him, he's from Iran, right? Or where's Patrick Bet-David from? Yeah, over in the Middle East. Should he be there? And he started kind of saying, well, you know, people come here and they're productive and they do these kinds of things, and it's kind of this and that, and it kind of was like, okay, more of like a real view, like, okay, that actually makes sense. But it's not what shows up when he goes on rants like this about white people like that. The skin color is not the issue. Like, it's actually very ignorant because it's just a matter of melanin levels in the skin. Like, that's just stupid. Like, but if you're talking about culture and maintaining the culture, yes, we do need to be careful when people come and then they assimilate and that sort of thing. That's what we're talking about. But they're talking about in Arabic on police badges in New York City now, and like all like different things like that. And so like, yeah, there's issues that come in when you have culture that's being imported. It's not about the skin color. And I have to assume that's what he's talking about, but it's not always clear based on how he's saying it.
No, it's not. And that's one of the weaknesses of Nick Fuentes. And like, we have a commenter here. Why is the point white and not Christian? And that would be, of course, my pushback
Or
for, you know, the United States. It's like, whether, you know, you can go watch our whole episode on the founding of the United States and whether or not it was truly Christian or if it was something else. But regardless, I do believe that the United States should be a Christian nation because I live here and I want to mostly promote Christian culture beyond anything else. And I believe that Christianity has the solution to racial divides. It truly is. It's like there's one body in Christ, and that's one and alone. So I understand. I'm going to push it both ways. I understand the massive pushback against Nick Fuentes and why people would want to just announce him as being, you talk about race in an uncomfortable way, in a way that's like, you know, like we need to be a white country. The only part of that I would agree that it's like, that is not the right way to talk about this, because the United States has always been multiracial. The continent has been multiracial, and then and I know it's been predominantly white and European as the settlers, but it's always been multiracial. And the true culture and soul and backbone of America is Christianity, not race, in my opinion. And so that's what I believe is more important. It's the culture, not the race. But also, you know, I get the things that Nick Fuentes talks about, and people, not just him, but people that I don't want to dismiss. I don't want to dismiss the young people that are like, yeah, but like, why am I not allowed? How come when I start talking about culture and start talking about different cultural issues, I end up getting thrown in the trash and called a racist just because I'm willing to see the connections between somebody's race and where they came from and the country that they came from and the culture that they're bringing in. And like, you know, for instance, it's like, there's people, especially on the left and the establishment, that are like, you're racist to talk about mass immigration. Like, those people coming from India are just as American as you are. And it's like, no, they're not. I'm sorry. If you import in half of India into the United States and the United States becomes predominantly Indian in the next 10 years, that's not enough time for any assimilation. You just altered the country. It's no longer America. Now it's a second India, you know, and that's true for any country that you're talking about.
It could be Sweden. Who cares? Like, it's the same difference.
It's the same difference, but that's what it makes it a really hard conversation to talk about once you start throwing out the R word, once you start throwing out the racist word, because it doesn't mean anything anymore. People have been called racist for so many stupid things that the word no longer has any weight or has any value. And so when you're communicating with people like Nick Fuentes or people like them, you have to get underneath it and you have to get more into the, like, what are you really talking about? Are you actually saying that there's some, you know, difference in value based off the color of your skin, or is it really a deeper issue of culture and of Christianity and these kinds of things? And this is the issue I have with Nick Fuentes is he doesn't, you know, delineate that strong enough. And he's said stuff that's like, no, you can't say stuff like that. It's hurtful for everybody for you to be talking in that way. So
I just one clarification. I don't even like the word race. I like the word ethnicity, because race, if you look at epigenetics and genetics and pigmentation, and you look at melanin and these skin colors, like, there's different markers and that sort of thing. But like, it's ridiculous. There is no race. I mean, if you have a black person and a white person, that's two different skin pigmentation and melanin levels, well, then their child is which one is that going to be? Like, it's ethnicity. So you can talk about the part of the world they're from. You have the Asian, and there's a whole history that you can go back to how that diversity in the gene pool was there, and then it kind of spread out, and that's how the world got populated with people who look different. Right. But like, I don't even like the word race. It's me, it's just different ethnicities and tones of brown. Like, everybody is a different tone of brown. Like, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying
right, and it is an issue of ethnicity.
Human
That's
race,
the thing.
yes.
The reason I don't want to completely dismiss people like Nick Fuentes is because he talks about real issues that have to do with ethnicity.
That's
which is
what we need to talk about.
But
this is the reason we're having
this super offensive, which ends up discrediting, a lot of what he has.
But
to say
Reese,
about
that's why we're having this conversation, because I'm coming at it from the perspective of, and I really need to get through some of these clips, but I'm coming at it from the perspective of, hey, he's talking about some things that really matter, some things that are very important, some things that need to be discussed. But this is why, like, I'm trying to make a point for, if I'm trying to speak to the people that are listening to him and that are hardcore fans. I'm not trying to dismiss them, but I'm trying to say, hey, if you're a hardcore fan of Nick Fuentes, I want to have a debate with you. I want to have a discussion with you, and I want to present the reasons why I am not. And it's not because of some of the issues; it's because of his core beliefs and values, and it's because of the way he talks about human beings and some of his beliefs about people. So I want to get through some more of these clips, because I think it really starts to paint a bigger picture here. So this is something he has to say about marriage.
Cooked. I just wish I could marry myself, I just wish I could marry me. But I can't have kids with me,
And I can tell you I'm super blessed. I have the best wife in the world. We have an amazing life. Building a family is the coolest thing ever.
Okay, so obviously they contrast that with Charlie Kirk and stuff. But okay, it's kind of funny. And again,
saying he wants to marry a white person and have white kids, and like,
he wants to marry himself. Here's something else he said about marriage. He said, "I totally see myself accidentally killing my wife because I just got mad. We'll be a few years into marriage. I'm going to be angry about something. It's going to be a little too hot in the house. I'm going to have one of those days I haven't slept all night and I haven't eaten. So I'm in the worst mood possible, and I'm going to say something and I'm just going to accidentally kill her." I'm like, things fly out of his mouth that I'm like, why would you ever say that? So here's another clip. This is from the interview we watched with Tucker Carlson. Wait, I'm going to have to pull it up. Sorry. I'm going to have to, throw my thing down and bring this back up. But he's talking about wives again, and he says something that I found slightly disturbing.
Ship the women, put them on a pedestal, and they they kind of get bossed around. They get henpecked by the women.
I think we're required to love our wives.
So obviously Tucker Carlson pushed back. I really appreciated how he pushed back over and over again with some of the things that he was saying,
especially on the issue of marriage. Sorry. Yeah.
I mean,
I will say this: when he got onto the corn subject, and all that stuff happening online, that was the thing I agreed with both of them, maybe the most on in the whole episode. I think they made some very good points on that. But this is the
also, I love Nick Fuentes' takedown of marijuana. He talked about how marijuana is not actually like a harmless drug, and talked about how both marijuana and then also being like chronically online being like really destructive for young people, and all like the cycles of young people not having community and all this kinds of stuff. When they got into that, I was like, wow, that's a really wholesome take from somebody that's like considered an edgelord. Like, that's actually like very wholesome. And I loved how he took down marijuana, because I was like, yeah, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, it's totally safe, when it's actually like completely destroying their lives. And I loved his takedown of corn as well. We're censoring that word, but that you're the same. That part of the conversation was like, this is really wholesome. But
yeah, it was probably my favorite part. So this is what he says in response to Tucker.
All over the New Testament, husbands love your wives, wives respect your husbands. That seems like a very natural balance to me.
Okay, so he makes his point.
Yeah, and I think that you have to love your wife as your wife.
Okay, this is where it gets, to me, it feels like it goes off the rails.
Yeah,
a lot of men,
as opposed to what? Your mom?
Well, no, like your buddy.
No.
Because I hear this all the time, and I hate this. Guys will say, I married my best friend.
So the context is he's not married. So I think also he's saying he's got very strong opinions about marriage when he's never been married.
And I think, she's your wife. She's not your best friend. Because there's a difference.
What is the difference?
I think that when you talk about your best friend, you're a peer. You're an equal.
Right there. Mm-hmm. I think when you talk about your best friend, you're a peer, you're an equal. And I'm like, did I just hear him say that about a potential wife, like about a wife. Like,
And I think your best friendships are with other men. And I think that your wife ultimately is subordinate to you. She's your helpmate.
all right, so that's enough of that. To me though, I'm like, okay, at my core, like my core beliefs fueled by my Christianity and by the Bible, like cause me to look at my marriage, my wife, and women in general differently than Nick Fuentes does. Like, I'll just say
absolutely.
that because I don't agree with that. I think there's differences. There's innate, and Tucker really starts to point those out. There's innate differences, and there can even be role differences. You know, if you believe the Bible, then you believe there are role differences between men and women, but there's not an equality difference there. Right. And your wife, absolutely, if you're a man, can be your best friend and can be and is your peer. You know, and in some ways, I'll just say this about my wife. In some ways, she's a whole lot smarter than me, and I'm not her peer in some areas because I can't even, hang with her when it comes to some things, so I'm like, all right, like I have a very different view than Nick Fuentes.
And his view is technically not biblical. It's so funny. I'm listening to a masculine, feminine series right now. One of my favorite Christian teachers is a guy named Chris Blackaby. You can look it up. It's called 3-Strand Cord, going through masculine and femininity in the Bible. It's really good. Tucker Carlson actually hits on some of this stuff when he talks about marriage and the difference between males and females. And he pushes back on Nick when Nick says, your wife should be, he agrees with Ayn Rand, who is, she's a libertarian lady who is very not Christian in any way. I'm not saying she didn't have some good ideas about the government and stuff, but she's not somebody that you'd want to model your personal relationships off of. And he was like, I agree with Ayn Rand when she said that the role of the wife is to be like the hero worshiper of the husband. Like the husband's the hero and the wife is worshiping the husband and worshiping like the work that he's doing and like being like, oh yeah, you're so good at your job and all that kind of stuff. And Tucker Carlson pushes back so hard and says, that is the worst thing for a man. That will destroy a man, having somebody inflate your ego over your work. He's like, the good thing about wives, as a wife that loves you, is she's interested in you, not what you do. And when he said that, I was like, that's it. That's my marriage. I've been married for 5 years. And that is the thing that has been the most offensive to me about my wife and the most encouraging and building up. Is that literally my wife, it dawned on me one day that like she cares about me, not about the things that I do. And that's for men. You want that. You want the things that you do to be like, boost my ego. Somebody respect me because of all these great things that I've done, boost me and build me up. And then it's like when you have somebody that loves you for who you are and your value in God as a person, and not like, no, I'm not just going to boost your ego over here. It's like Tucker Carlson, he explains it in a way that I thought was really beautiful about marriage that gets to the difference. But that whole thing about the helpmate, if you get into the original Hebrew, talking about where it says Adam, Eve is like Adam's helpmate or whatever, the whole, getting the whole thing, like the splitting and like Eve taken from the side. When you get into the original Hebrew, the word for helpmate is also translated as savior. And God uses it to describe himself multiple times. And the different Hebrew words that describe your wife as your helpmate, it's your equal and opposite. It's almost like the two wings of the dove, or it's like it's your opponent who's helping you. That's the helpmate. It's literally, it's like they're opposite of you. And that's why they're helpful to you, because they're opposite of you, then it allows you to be then like a full complete set, right? And so to say that is like, well, my wife is not equal to me.
I'm going to cut you off, Reese, because we're over an hour now, and
sorry. Anyways, but that's where it's like, Nick Fuentes does not have the best biblical understanding of the masculine and feminine and how they form together to make a complete whole. So.
Yeah. So this clip is Tucker Carlson saying Joseph Stalin is the worst person that ever lived. And then they contrast it with, if y'all watched the interview, you saw that Nick Fuentes said, this certain date was, I woke up and I realized, it's Stalin's birthday and I'm a fan, right? And so they were going to get back to it and then they never did. So I'm actually going to skip that since I just gave you the whole thing and just move on to the next one. But this next one here, so we're not going to get into a discussion about Joseph Stalin, but this is on his podcast, okay? And I'm going to play a part of this. and again, I'm going to say, it's technically out of context. There's a little bit of a clipping here, but it's what he's saying and the way he's saying it and how he's not bringing any sort of. I'm just going to play it.
There is an occult element at the high levels of society, and specifically among the Jews. So many of the people that are perpetrating the lies and the destruction on the country.
So obviously he's talking about sort of this elite class and a specific class and group of Jews. Like that's what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
They are evildoers. They are people that worship false gods. They are people that practice magic or rituals or whatever. And more than anything, those people need to be, when we take power.
Okay. I'm pausing it for a second. I want to put the Salem witch trials imagery in your mind for a minute.
They need to be given the death penalty. Straight up. And
he just said they need to be given the death penalty straight up. And then he looked very awkwardly down. Like,
I'm far more concerned.
I don't know if he's questioning what he just said or not, but what are y'all's thoughts on that? Because I'll just give my thought real fast. If there are elites doing evil things, which obviously we know Hollywood exists, we know that there are some people not everyone in Hollywood's evil or whatever, but it's like there's a lot of evil things that happen, right? There's a lot of, you've got all the crazy stuff with the island and all that kind of stuff over the last several years that's been in the news, but it's like evil things happen, right? If somebody's convicted of something evil, I think that they need to be punished, in a rightful way for that conviction, right? But I think what he's doing here is maybe saying that, but it doesn't sound that way. And I don't think it comes across that way to the listeners. What do y'all think?
I think, unfortunately, you're right that it doesn't. But the problem with this specific example is that he's not wrong, but he was taken out of context and people don't understand what he's saying. I can give some context to it because this is actually like my forte. I know a lot about what he just said. And this is where I have been doing study on this for years, multiple years. He is talking about the elites, the dark, like Kabbalists, black magic stuff that's happening in this world on a much larger scale than most people realize. He is talking about pedophilia, human trafficking, and pedivorism. It is a thing. These things are happening, and they are happening with people who you would never imagine are doing it. These people who are committing these atrocious crimes are at a point where they are so embedded in it, they are no longer even hardly human. And these are the kinds of people who probably need to have something happen. And I'm not going to make any clear accusations on that, but that's what he's talking about. And unfortunately, people don't understand that because they haven't looked into it. And he probably shouldn't have said it that lightly and moved on. He needed to explain that a little bit more and to maybe even give some examples if he didn't want his words to be taken out of context, because what people heard him say was kill all Jews.
Yeah.
And that's not what he's saying.
This is why I say the word sloppy. Like, we may be talking about a real thing. We may be talking about a real conclusion. We may be talking about, but there's a lot that is skipped. He did use the word death penalty, which implies a legal thing happening.
A legal process.
Right, a legal process for actual crimes.
However, but like you said, I think it's good. Like, yes, absolutely. If somebody did those things, that's what probably should take place, or whatever the fullest extent of the law is in that particular case. But
and what I said actually is the nice version. Like, that's the paint. That's the pretty version of what's actually happening.
I think I agree. I mean, I know that kind of stuff is taking place, and I think that's a very solid point. And I think that clip is out of context, right? And probably there's a lot more there that needs to be explained. But to me, I'm like, the way he says it sounds like he's saying anybody that practices magic, right? Or anybody of this race, right? Like, that's what it sounds like. And it's like, do I agree that practicing magic is evil? Yes. Do I agree that it's bad? Yes. Do I think that it deserves the death penalty? No. But there are things that do deserve the death penalty, right? And that's why we have laws. That's why we have judges and we have the court system. So it's like there are things that people do get the death penalty for. Right?
But understanding is paramount, because black magic, which is what he actually said specifically, black magic requires the letting of blood. in
Right.
one way or another. So
And
it's like,
so with more
that's
context,
hard.
it does make sense. It does make more sense, but I'm just saying, like, yeah, maybe that clip is way too out of context, and it doesn't work. But let me play this last. Any final thoughts on that? And I want to play this last clip.
Yeah, it's just tough. It's really tough. I mean, I know there's so many people and there's so many clips like that are like, and again, like I'm not excusing that. I understand why people are like, well, this guy just is a Jew hater. Like, but also like, you know, with the interview with Tucker Carlson and other clips and stuff I've seen, it's like he does in fact have friends that are Jews. Like he has friends that are of other minorities. It's not like he is actually just like the way that he treats personal people is like, you know, you're this race, you're that race. I hate you because of your ethnicity or your race or whatever. Again, I'm not in his camp. I don't like a lot of the ways that he does things. But you know, this was a larger discussion for another day. A lot of this comes back down to how do we deal with you know, the fact of the matter of the larger Israel issue, and we cannot deal with it, and we can't find some kind of unity with the larger Israel issue and the issue that he brings up about the international Jewish community. That's a special interest group that, and that's not racist to say that. There's an international Jewish community because of the diaspora of the Jews that has, you know, that they are a kind of a group that has not assimilated into like every country as like, well, I'm American, I'm this, I'm that. It's like, well, they also still are Jewish and consider themselves to be Jewish. And there is a bit of a organized, you know, kind of like we're helping either Jerusalem or helping Zionism,
right? But that's
just
a conversation for another day, though. You know,
it's a conversation for another day. But when he brings up stuff
topic.
like that, it's like if you see him bringing that up, and that's the reason why you're like, I'm not going to listen to anything this guy says. We're never going to be able to solve this issue on the side of the right wing because you just have these two groups. Ryan was like, I'm not in these two groups. I'm not saying there's more than these two groups, but we have two groups. We have Ben Shapiro and we have Nick Fuentes and people underneath that are like them. We have more than that, obviously, on the right. I don't fall under either of those groups either. But you have these two groups that are like, we're going to sit here and throw rocks at each other for the rest of eternity, and we're never going to have a actual conversation without calling the other person like terrible names. And it's just like, this is so stupid. We have to at some point get over this and decide what is the right thing for foreign policy for the United States. And, you know, look at whether or not there is a real, it's true or not, or whether or not we have an interest group in America that has too much power over, you know, Congress, like with APEC and stuff like that. It's like, if we're not able to have that,
and we need to do a whole separate episode about that.
Right. Then like, if we can't have that conversation with like adults, then we're never going to get anywhere.
I think you're right. And I think maybe let's do a whole nother episode about it because I think it's a good conversation to have. Let's play this last clip here. And this was just from the very start of, this is the one that y'all referenced, this PBD podcast, 3 million views from a month ago. Who is Nick Fuentes? I'm just going to play like a minute or two of the opening clip. So he pulled out the most viral parts of the podcast to get you interested. But it felt like a good clip to play.
Your opinion of me. I'm Middle Eastern, married to a white girl. Or do you think it's better off for America to minimize more of me coming to America?
America's no longer America. Mass migration is changing what America is. And
So obviously, Reese, you made that point to an extent earlier, and that could be, viewed different ways depending on the context.
Want to conserve what America historically has always been.
Well, that's a little bit, that's a little bit harsh.
Well, I'm not in favor of interracial marriages. That's against my values. I want to have a white.
Okay. I'm not in favor of interracial marriages. That's against my values. He says, I want to have a
wife. I want to have white kids.
I want to have a white wife. I want to have white kids. And I'm like, again, at the core of my being, my values are different than his completely in that area, like completely. So I'm like, I do not jive with that.
That's important to me.
That's kind of racist.
I agree.
Okay.
But let's remember the context.
How bad is the video? Is it appropriate?
He says that's kind of racist. And he says, I agree. So I'm like, I'll stop it there. We don't have to play anymore. But obviously PBD calls him out on certain things, within this video. Y'all can go watch the full video if you want to get the full context for that. But here's my thesis.
I want to watch the uncut video, actually.
Yeah. here's my thesis. Here's my conclusion. Well, it is an hour and 48 minutes long, so they
long.
probably leave a good portion.
That looked
of it.
like some jump cuts to me, but I don't know. Maybe
No,
it
that's
wasn't.
the intro to get you to watch the whole thing.
Right. They're going to
Is
get you
it?
to watch
Okay.
the rest of it.
Yeah, those weren't even
Okay.
out in context for the context of the interview. Like I watched the whole interview, and those were
okay.
also out of context. A lot of them.
Yeah. So here's my pushback is like in response to a lot of things Reese was saying, but also this is my thesis as well, is that he claims to be America first, right? And Reese is talking about unity on the right, and that's a big thing. Like, how do we unify? And his whole story is I've been disavowed from all these groups on the right. They all hate me and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, we can't have unity. I said this earlier this week on a different episode. We can't have unity without accountability, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are two different things. So in my mind, there's no way I'm ever going to unify with somebody like this around any of the behavior flaws I see, the character flaws, the core value issues that are different, those kind of things. I'm not going to celebrate that. I'm not going to boost that, right? I can fight for some of the same things, problems, try to fix some of the same problems. But it's just like when I'm listening to him, I'm like, it's as a Christian, I'm recognizing like I am not America first in the way that he's America first.
Right.
Like I am Christian first, and I'm Jesus first, and I'm people first. And that's actually elevated above my political stance. Now, politically, I'm in a lot of ways, I'm America first, because I see how nations are taking advantage of America and stuff. But spiritually speaking, I'm not. I'm actually kingdom of heaven first. And so I take a different stance than him. And I know he claims to be a Catholic. I know all that. I can't see his heart. But my thesis is, it seems to me like the pattern is bitterness. And I'm like, hey, I'm speaking to those that are hardcore fans of Nick Fuentes, and I'm saying like, if you at least see if you see what I'm seeing at the very least.
Sure.
Any conclusions, closing thoughts?
I think that it's a good question to ask. If is all of this really just dividing the right and just ruining the momentum that has, and how should we move forward? So I think the best way is for us to just actually have discussions around the topics, like we talked about. That is the indication of this. That is what is taken away. Is I'm interested in what does he purport to be giving an answer to or a solution for, and what is the actual issue, and what should we should be talking about that, because there's lots of people listening to what he's saying. And so if we're not going to offer solutions to the same problems that he's talking about, then perhaps we should be prepared for that division to remain. And so I just think it's good for us to look at the topic, make sure that we are actually understanding ourselves, what's going on, what's critical thinking for ourselves, so that we're not really just parroting anything anybody says on any side of anything. We need to really dig into things for ourselves and understand them and do critical thinking on our own.
Yeah. And I just, my last thought, just thinking about this, it's like, I know I've been like defending Nick, but again, it goes back to like not him specifically or some of his specific things that he said, but more of trying to reach to, it's like the mission field of the, again, young men that listen to Nick and are hit on the like nationalism and being against, foreign bodies invading the US or affecting our politics. Him talking about like, well, we need to have a Christian homogenous culture or else the nation's going to fall apart. It's like things like that they're like, yeah, these are important. He talks about it in a way that other people don't, and he's willing to, push on things that other people don't. That's important to me with like, as Christians, we need to be able to have those kind of conversations and get into that. And of course, I'd say on this issue, he's absolutely wrong about the solution when it comes to the race solution. Like he was talking about this, obviously that is 100% racist, and that's wrong. And it's wrong he's conflating whiteness, which again, it's like we're talking about race now, when it's like, as Ryan is talking about, we should be talking about ethnicity. We should be talking about culture, because he actually wants to preserve Christian culture. And there's a heart behind that that's different from the heart behind, like, I want America to be a white nation, as if that was the solution. Because that's one, besides it being, okay, I know the word racist doesn't really mean anything anymore, but it is racist. I think it's worth pointing that out. It obviously is racist, but also it's not a solution, because it has nothing to do with culture. You can have a bunch of white people that like, what's the point? Where's their heart? Where's their culture? Are they creating the kingdom of God, or are they just being like, we're white people? Like it's so incredibly immature and stupid. that it's like the answer, again, goes back to Christian culture, which is the solution even for the racial division, that it's like, I am one body, one humanity in Christ, with another person, that like, that's sort of obviously an awful thing that he said there. But that's, again, it's like, those are the three things. That's like nationalism, being afraid, being concerned, legitimate concern about like our other countries affecting US politics too much. What about our culture? Is our culture falling apart? Are we splintering into like, we have way too many splinters of different cultures. We need one strong culture. Like, I do think that, again, Christian culture is kind of the answer to all of those things, which I'm not going to get into right now. But it's like, it's like, I would rather have a dialogue with people that listen to this guy than just throw them away as saying, oh, well, you listen to Nick Fuentes, so you're, do you hear what he said about race? You're racist. I'm never going to talk to you. Because again, it's just like that's your mission field. Those people that are listening to him, they have a lot better chance, I believe, of actually growing up to become mature Christians than the people on the left that are literally want just the destruction of society. And like, they hate themselves. They hate this culture. Like, if they're white, they think that white people are inherently, they just hate the West so much that they want them to die. It's like a suicide pact. It's horrendous. And it's just like, I don't know if you're going to be able to win those people over, but you probably have a better chance winning over people that are actually like, well, I think America's good and I want it to survive. And it's like, okay, we can get into that race issue because they're not right about that, obviously. But that's I don't know. I just see it that way. And maybe I'm naive, but that's kind of the way that I see it.
I think that Nick Fuentes is kind of a product of his environment. And you said conflated, Reese, and that's exactly the word. A lot of the things that he is representing here, he is conflated with other things that are real, or that are actually like important. And I think that part of the problem is this generation that he is a part of has been mistreated in a particular way, particularly when it comes to education. I don't think that this generation fully understands which I'm pretty sure he's Gen Z. I don't think they fully understand what it is that they're talking about oftentimes. Not that they're not smart, it's just that they have been educated in a way that causes them to come to certain conclusions, like the difference between subordination and position, for example. Like when he's talking about the wife thing, like those are different things, but he's conflated the two. And I think that he's a bit on an island, and he needs some guidance, and he needs a whole people group around him to help him understand what he actually believes. Because what it looks like is he just got really, really famous overnight, and is like, quote unquote overnight, and he doesn't even really fully know what he believes. And so he is experiencing his journey out loud to everyone, and that's got to be weird, because I can't imagine myself like having to figure out what I think and how I feel about things in front of millions of people regularly. That's a lot of pressure, and it could cause one to do some pretty extreme things. So he needs prayer and guidance.
I think that you hit the nail on the head, Doug. The last thought I had was like, I feel like, I wonder how many close friends he has, like that can keep him accountable, or like, as iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. That idea, it's like, I wonder if he has that, and it kind of seems like he might not. I don't know.
It doesn't seem like it. It's like, hey, that's somebody you can go to and say, hey, I'm feeling this kind of way about this, and I feel like I'm going to say this on live air. And then your friend's like, I'm not so sure that's a great idea.
Yeah, you got the issue right, but like, don't say that. Like, why would you say that? Anyway, so. All right. Well, that's a longer episode than normal, but that's what we got for y'all today. Let us know what you think in the comments, and we will see y'all next time. Gold is not just a backup plan if the world falls apart. It's an investment opportunity that could set you up for generations. There's never really a bad time to invest in gold, but you want to make sure you have the right guide. And that is where Genesis Gold Group shines. Whether you are a first-time buyer or a seasoned investor, their trusted expertise and competitive pricing makes them an easy choice. They offer tangible assets in case of emergencies, but they can also design the perfect IRA just for you. And they'll even cut through all that confusing red tape from the IRS. We at Filibusted love the genius design of the Prepper Bar, which breaks up into sections like a chocolate bar. But if you prefer a more high security insured gold storage, they have that too. And unlike Fort Knox, the gold is actually there and 100% owned by you. Genesis Gold Group is a safe, simple, and convenient way to invest. Visit filibustedgold.com today for your free investment guide from Genesis Gold Group.